Hey everybody, welcome to this showcase video of Elemental Gardens. I don't usually make videos like this, so savor this moment I guess, because it's going to be extremely rare. But I wanted to make a special showcase video of this park since I put it together over the last 1.5 weeks and recorded it over a couple of days in 30 hours, but I never really had the time to make a full cinematic video, and I also had to make that 1 minute sneak peek promotional video for PAX East. And so I've already kind of shown off the park in such a way that I don't really feel a cinematic video is really going to do it, but I still want to do a showcase of this park in which I actually go through everything and explain some of the things that I haven't been able to explain, and of course also show you some of the POVs and basically what this park looks like. Also, I need an excuse to drop off all of the blueprints and everything that I want to release about this park. So if you want to see this park for yourself, you can download it down in the description. I'll put a link to the park download on Steam and also some of the blueprints. I don't know at this point in time what exactly is going to be blueprintable. Some of the coasters are blueprints from Planet Coaster College. The observation tower is going up for sure, but as in buildings, I still have to look at that, but you'll be able to check all of that out in the description of this video. Anyway, let's get into it and actually explain you some of the bits of this park, which is, I guess, going to be pretty interesting because I never do this kind of thing. It's actually pretty interesting to be able to look at everything and just explain it without having to move on to the next thing that is going to happen in a certain video. So we have the main street over here, which is looking pretty cool, I guess. I knew that this would be a very controversial kind of style, and I also have to be very honest. I really rushed this main street. I'm personally not too happy about how it turned out. I do like the way that the entrance building works together with the main observation tower though. And the main observation tower I'm a pretty big fan of. I'm really happy with how that turned out. The rest of the park is not that great. Like some of the arches on this building, for instance, there are some details which weren't really that necessary, but overall I'm quite happy with the entrance that it makes into the park, especially for the amount of time that I spent building it. So we have the standard entrance, a little bit like modern classical style, and we have the interesting PAX sign on top of that as the new logo of PAX. And then we have all of these buildings on the main street. There could have been some more functionalities, like at the moment we just have this toilet on this side, and I believe we have Chief Beef over here. We have just a Memento, which I guess is, what is that? It's closed. Oh, that isn't very good. I'm not even sure what that is anymore. I think it's a gift shop. Yeah, it's a gift shop because realistically you want to have that near the entrance of your park. And we have some coffee as well, so that's more or less the McCafe and the gift shop covered. So there isn't too much in this main street. Part of the reason was that I didn't want to break up the look of the buildings as it was. Like this building, for instance, I felt would just be broken by having a standard in-game sort of entrance to a whatever kind of, what are these things called again? Shop or facility. But yeah, the basic buildings that we have is a Japanese-ish inspired building on the left here, a somewhat boring building but with the interesting like cantilever wooden part sticking out here, a very boring sort of fill-in building that I also wanted to use to get some different colors into this side of the main street. Otherwise it was all just brown-ish of the same shades and some just grayscale colors as well. And the Art Deco building on the corner. Now this is a very simple Art Deco building and very quickly just put together. It was really just all I could really achieve with the small amount of pieces and time that I had, but Art Deco in general is a very interesting theme. I haven't seen too much Art Deco in the workshop or on videos, and for anybody watching, I think it's a very interesting theme to try and mess around. There's lots of inspiration to be had. I might also try it at some point in the future, but hey, I'm not too sure when I actually have the time to do that. Now moving on to the other side, we have the Chief Beef on the corner, which is arguably my favorite building in the park, bar the observation tower. It's really simple, but I kind of like it, just a contemporary-ish building, with the nice Chief Beef, of course, greeting everybody. Now this is closed as well. I'm pretty sure that I actually have some staff issues over here. That might be it. Let me actually quickly check out the staff management here. Yeah, what do we have? Okay, we have some very low motivated people. That might very well be the issue, but on the other hand, this is just closed down, so that needs to be open. that should fix it. But yeah, we have that building over here, which is a little bit inspired by McDonald's and typical mall designs. I guess it is somewhat similar to the Starbucks design as well. Some people commented about this, and I definitely kind of see it. But having those wooden kinds of blinds to cover up the windowless building is something that I took some inspiration from McDonald's for. Now these buildings, I had some comments about, they kind of do stick out, and I do agree with that sort of sentiment. I very quickly put these in here to have some townhouse-esque buildings, which are more focused on like a vertical sort of profile than being just horizontal, but in the end they look more traditional than the rest of the buildings. Now I was going for a sort of new urbanist, new traditional kind of look to them, but in the end they still kind of stick out in terms of the ideas that goes into the design of these buildings compared to what the rest of the park is like. This building kind of fits that style as well. And then this building really more fits this side of the main street again. This turned out to be one of my secret favorites out of the entire park. I think this building in total, like coming up with it and building it, all just like was done in the span of maybe 15 minutes, maybe less, possibly less even than that. And it's very simple, but I think it works out quite well with the textures and with the rest of the main street as well. It's just clean in general. So that's the modern main street with a big rhapsody of random stuff in there. Now going into the first area, which as we can tell by the observation tower in the middle of the park, which kind of signs out what the different areas are. We have the first area over here, which is water. And I didn't want to go with water rides, but I wanted to show off really what the water in Planet Coaster is like and what you can do with it. So here we have a bit of a boulevard next to the wooden coaster. Perfect timing over here, by the way, which is so smooth. I'm not sure why I usually can't get my coasters this smooth. Well, I kind of know because they're more difficult in terms of layouts, and usually I actually prefer keeping the shaping of the rides realistic over making them super smooth. But with a wooden coaster like this, you can actually make them very smooth while keeping the shaping quite realistic as well. So this is a super smooth coaster that has maybe a few sort of jagged points, but overall it's a very nice smooth ride. And we have a nice skyline of that and the observation tower in the back with this lake as well. And then we have Stormbreaker, which is from my Planet Coaster College series, and I just kind of put this in here. It's a terrible decision in terms of park layout. Like, I would not recommend. It doesn't work well with the wooden coaster. The wooden coaster in general, I would say, is coming too close to the observation tower because they're kind of competing for interest. The idea was that if you go into this direction, the wooden coaster will act as a wayfinding weenie that'll draw you toward this area and makes you want to ride the wooden coaster, but it sort of because of the way that it curves around, it comes very close to the observation tower over here. And realistically, in terms of park planning, I should have had it more go into this direction. That's at least what I would recommend. It works out this way though, and I'm still happy with the overall layout of the coaster. Anyway, that's probably enough talking about this wooden coaster in general. I think it's about damn time that we actually get on a ride. I think we have to wait over here until the next car is gonna actually make the block, because this is a block sectioned coaster, so this coaster has to realistically finish this block until... Okay, I guess we don't. Oh wait, never mind, this is a lift hill. What am I talking about? Don't listen to me, I'm stupid. This is a lift hill anyway, so I don't have to worry about block sections. I just had a very long waiting time so that this coaster wouldn't have to wait on the lift hill, because if this car didn't clear the block breaks at the end here before this car reached the top of the lift hill, this would have to wait on the lift hill. Anyway, let's get into the ride. Now, this may be a little bit laggy if I'm watching this right now for myself, but when you're watching this back, it should be more or less fine. I'll put some more smooth, slowed down game footage in here, so this should be fine. So anyway, the layout. We just have that first airtime hill, which is crazy. The first drop actually gets super massive G's. We have a turnaround, which is quite nice and smooth, into another airtime hill, and then into a pretty large helix. Now this coaster was mostly inspired by Colossus in Hyde Park in Germany, which is the tallest wooden coaster in the world, and it features a very similar layout. It's also based on the Intamin plug and play prefabricated wooden coasters, which also have those nice airtime hills at the end, which bring you some pretty mad airtime. And I just really like this coaster. It was very quickly put together, and it definitely could have had some more hills over here. Really didn't have the space for it, but I think it does quite well actually get that sort of smoothness and shaping of the real-life wooden coasters that it's based on. Now, what's also kind of interesting about this ride is in terms of the results. I rarely look at these things, but this thing pulls some pretty heavy vertical G-forces right at the bottom of the drop here, since it's a very, very quick sort of jolt up again. We can actually check the live data from this coaster. Yeah, there we go. So it reaches a pretty high speed and then gets you down to 4.96, which is the maximum G-force. And that's really about as high as you really want to go. This is already super high for a wooden coaster. You don't really want to go much higher, but still, I think it's quite nice to have that. It's pretty nice to have some high Gs on the top there, or on the bottom there. Now on the top here, you actually have some of that long airtime hills, so you'll be having airtime flying out of your seat on the top of this entire hill for basically the entire time when it's hovering about -50 or -0.5, which is very nice. A very gentle turnaround around here and into another airtime hill, which should give you a little bit more airtime than the first one, but it's a little bit shorter as well. It's a bit more like, gosh, I forgot the term. It's an ejector airtime hill, which is definitely what comes back at the end of these hills over here, because as you can see, when you're going over these hills, you're really reaching -1 and even lower. I saw it peak to about -1.6, 1.7, and I just wanted to talk about that for anybody who's interested in that kind of stuff, and it's what I was definitely interested in making this coaster. So generally, some pretty high Gs on the bottoms of the drop to really make you like pushed into the car, and then on the top of those hills, some very, very low minus Gs to really make you fly out of your seat. And especially on some of these points here, it's pretty long airtime actually. I am not sure what the total airtime duration is. 7.3 seconds, which is pretty doable for a coaster of that size. There are not too many airtime moments in it, since we also have the helix and the turnaround moment here. Anyway, I think it's time to ride the Stormbreak, so let's hijack this car very quickly and talk about that for a little bit. So this ride, there is only one of them in real life, and that's also what this is mostly inspired by. It's a real family ride, and it's really the only kiddie ride that the park has. But it's a very mild ride, and actually this one is a bit more intense than the real life version, but it just kind of curves around and goes upside down, but it doesn't really, because these carriages, as you can see, they always remain, well, they don't always remain, but you should want to make this coaster in such a way that these carriages never go upside down, because if they do, things could become pretty dangerous. But the fun of this coaster, I think, is just swinging around in this kind of relaxing kind of layout. I would love to ride one of these in real life, or I guess the only one in real life. No idea how and if that's ever going to happen, but I think this is a very interesting kind of family ride. I was actually super happy when they announced that they added these in Planet Coaster. Super surprised as well, but I think it's a fun, unique kind of ride. So now we have a couple of flat rides over here, and this is one of the most important, if not probably my favorite kind of build your own space, because this park was built for PAX East, so that people who visit the gaming convention, people who visit it could play the game on some booths that Planet Coaster has, and you can basically just kind of mess around in the landscape and build your own stuff. So I wanted to build the park after that as well, and kind of provide some different landscapes that you can try the game on. So over here we kind of have the entrance into the lake if you want to try some water interaction, but also on the other side we have the pit, which is largely open for anybody to build in, but it also has a mine train over here. Now, I've talked about this in the video of it, and of course this mine train is super inspired by Dynamite Blaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon 1, and really just a one big reference to that coaster, which is that one old mine train coaster. I don't know why that leg spike just happened. But that one old mine train coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 that went through a large pit in the middle of the desert. Alas, we're not in a desert over here, but it's still a very similar idea. We have the mine train coaster, we have this pit, and it gives you an idea of the interaction that you can have with the ground, because this is also the earth section of the park, as we can tell here by the tower. So we have the ravine and the tunnels and everything, and we have the coaster that's already starting, so let's get on board. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong train. And that is also the wrong train. So there we go. And it's a quite interesting ride, since it kind of shows you through the tunnels and through the pits and through anything that you can go sort of below the ground level with in this game. I was considering making some larger caves, but that felt like it was kind of off, so we only have the few caves, or tunnels if you will, that the coaster is going through underground, which still kind of shows off that aspect, but definitely the entire way that you can go underground in Planet Coaster is one amazing thing that I probably could have shown off in this park a bit more, but this was, given the time and like space that I had over here to do this really felt like the more feasible thing to try, so this is what I went for in the end. So yeah, we mostly have all of these curves through this landscape. This thing is hitting a ridiculous speed, by the way, for a mine train coaster. It is pretty intense actually, which I guess is part of the fact that the pit is so large, so it does have a lot of height to clear. But it's a pretty intense ride through all of these caves. And finally, after all of those hills and even getting a little bit of a pop of airtime at the end there, we're going up on the lift hill again and kind of going through a little bit more foresty area, though then again this is on the outskirts of the park and I didn't really want to put too much foliage over here. But this is really just bringing the mine train back to the station, and it's a bit of a reference to the old mine trains, the way that they really used to be back in the day when they were one of the first steel coasters to ever be built, and just very small sections of lift hill followed by very slow curves. And that's all very classic and interesting, but it's not what I wanted to try with this ride. It's mostly about ridiculous caves and twists and turns. So this is the sort of earth section of the park. We also have an interesting ravine that you could do some things with. I don't know, I think it would be interesting to drop down there and come back after the path, or do it the other way around. Anyway, it's some interesting landscape to play with. So yeah, moving on, I actually named this ride the Canyon Blaster as a reference to the Dynamite Blaster from Roller Coaster Tycoon. I hope the Frontier guys don't mind me too much dropping in some pretty sneaky references like that, because it is after all a completely different game. But hey, there are many people who say that this game is the spiritual successor to Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I kind of feel that way as well, so yeah, I'll just keep putting these in. Fun fact actually, this is called the Water Wood Chip. It's broken down, but that's a reference to karts and coasters. Anyway, we have a few flat rides over here. Nothing too interesting, just kind of filler. I do like this section of the park though. It's quite cozy, especially with all of the flat rides. And moving on, we have the air section over here with airplanes. Because what else? This is the thing that mostly fits it. And instead of having the terraforming go down, we have the terraforming going up over here with those Paradise Falls-ish table mountains, I guess. Just a long stretch of terraforming. And the 4D coaster, which has one of my favorite ever camera positions. Let me just very quickly show this off. When you go into one of the interest camera positions, or any of them really, you can very well see all of the carriages spin around like that, and it's super interesting to watch. That said, I'm pretty sure it looks terrible in 20 FPS, so I'll get a really good POV and a better FPS in a second, but this is basically what the ride looks like, and I think out of all the rides that you have in-game, this is one of the better ones to kind of simulate that idea of flying. I could have gone with a flying coaster as well, but I don't think it would have worked quite as well in terms of skyline, because these coasters are very sort of narrow and long in terms of layouts, and they give you that awesome looking skyline. It's also by far the tallest coaster. Actually, it is the tallest coaster. I don't actually know about how much, because this is the second tallest coaster, and this is 40 meters drop, and this is a 50. Okay, that's actually quite a big difference. But yeah, This is a very tall coaster that is almost in hypercoaster territory. And I think it's just the more interesting ride to show off. Like, I also wanted to show off some of the most interesting rides in Planet Coaster, which is why I chose the wooden coaster to show off how damn well those wooden supports work. The Mine Train coaster, because I quite like the way that it interacts with the ground. And the 4D coaster, because it's just one of my favorites. It's very hard to pull off. The rotation is a bitch to get right sometimes, but it's a really cool coaster if you actually manage to get it right. And if you actually finish the layout with all of the rotation seats in every spot of the layout, it is so awesome. So yeah, let's quickly make sure that we're at the top of the lift hill here, because it's not too fast of a lift hill. And get on the ride over here. I think this should be pretty good. And you always have to get into the first person view on this ride to actually see the rotation. So here we're going upside down. I could have actually changed the rotation on that part, because you're like on your head as you go through the drop, which is very pressuring. But that aside, that little perk aside, I quite like the rotation of the ride. Especially here on the 0G roll, where it goes absolutely crazy. And then we have the overbanked curve, which it sort of looks toward the rest of the coaster. We have the pretty unique element, which doesn't actually exist in real life, especially on this kind of coaster, but it works out quite well. And finally, the final Raven turn, as they call them, back into a fly-to-lie element, as they call that, toward the end, and into the brakes, and back into a position where we can head back into the station. So it's not too long of a ride. In real life, these things aren't that long either, because they lose a lot of speed throughout their ride. But it's a very interesting ride. I also kind of like the station. I think there definitely could have been more to it. It's kept very simple, but the idea behind it, and definitely the way in which you can actually take all of these separate roof pieces to make a curved roof like that, I think that's something that's quite interesting. So anyway, I think it's time to move on to the final area, and the most stupid area. I wanted to make this the fire area because, you know, we have the 4 elements going on, so that's interesting. But fire obviously is the one element that you don't actually have in-game as any kind of terraforming or landscaping option. There is one thing though that we do have, and that's flamethrowers. So I put these over here as the idea that I guess this is the fire area. It's so stupid. So we have the fire area over here, and what else can we put in here than only the hottest and most lit of rides? So we have the super loop thing, which is arguably one of the most hated rides ever. It's just a loop and it goes around, and according to Six Flags this is a roller coaster. Well, you tell me. I don't think so. But we have 2 loops over here, and they're both fire. This one is kind of small, and this one is super big, and it has a top hat on top of it as well, so that's really awesome. And this ride is basically a rip-off of Full Throttle, except the loop is the other way around. But I do quite like it, and I think you guys aren't too curious about the POV, because I've shown this one already as well in Planet Coaster College. But it's still quite interesting, because, you know, I changed the colors, and I put flamethrowers on the side of this thing. Also, I did change the ending to something that is probably better than Full Throttle. So, the start is kind of scary, because it's straight out of the station into the launch, so you don't know when it's gonna happen. But when you get launched, we have the flamethrowers on the sides, you get scorched, and we go into the loop, which has a lot of hang time. Like, you're hanging upside down for quite a while on this loop. And after that, we're getting into some very low curves, higher curve, and finally into a half loop, into what is sort of the mid-course brake section of the ride, except it isn't. Except this is actually a backwards and forwards launch. So we're stopping here, and after waiting for, you're never sure how long, because I set a certain double time there, where it could be anything between those 2 times. We go back, and then we launch forward again, the flamethrowers shooting as we pass. It's so ridiculous. And into the top hat, which has some pretty mad airtime, and into the final brakes. And we only start braking the coaster as we're already down. We're not going to be like Full Throttle and brake down the coaster while you're still on that final lift hill. No, or while you're still on that final drop. No, we we're gonna wait after you're done with that drop, because that drop is still pretty interesting. It is still a 40-meter drop, so that is something you want to experience, and only after that we're gonna really break down the coaster. So that's about it. There's the closed hypercube over here, which is, I believe in Planet Coaster, just the cube. In real life it has a French name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I only know how to spell it, but I don't want to embarrass myself here. But this thing is just cool to look at, so I guess I just want to take a look at this thing very quickly. Definitely one of my favorite flat rides in terms of the entire design and engineering behind it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I named it a hypercube because it kind of reminded me of a hypercube in terms of how mind-boggling it is to look at it. It almost hurts. It's super confusing. Of course, it's not actually four-dimensional. So yeah, that's the entire park. Oh no, wait, I forgot about this ride. It's actually closed, so I guess I forgot about it in every single way ever. It's just a nice way to kind of break up the monotony of having the path beside the lake for the entire time here. And I think it's a very nice backdrop for the entire park in general. It's nice to see this thing in the front with the wooden coaster and the observation tower in the middle as our big weenie. Altogether, it is definitely a very simple park. I put this together in less than 30 hours would be my estimate, and over the course of a couple of days in which I had plenty of other priorities as well. But in the end, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. It's definitely not my favorite, probably my least favorite of what I've done, but some of the things that I had to do are just behind the idea of the park. The idea of the park was not to make the most amazing, detailed, crazy, realistic park ever. I tried to sort of hit a balance between making a somewhat realistic park while at the same time making a park that should show off Planet Coaster as well as possible. And for that reason as well, I didn't want to make it too large and didn't want to make it too detailed, or the performance would really suffer. And I just had to make it empty, so that it's sort of an unfinished park which you can actually take on yourself and build in these unfinished areas. If you're somebody who is at PAX and wants to check out what Planet Coaster is all about, then hopefully this park should provide you pretty good space to do that, while at the same time also giving enough rides and interesting things to look at to actually check out what the game has to offer. And that is really the idea behind this park in general. Also, there are some people going to be live streaming on this, which I have no idea how that's going to go, but that'll be interesting to see it. But yeah, that is basically what Elemental Gardens is all about. And I definitely know about all of the negative things and all of the more criticism that I've been getting about this, which is definitely something that I appreciate, and I'll take through all of my future things as well. Especially the main street is just, it's just difficult. This part just sticks out like a bit of a sore thumb. So does this building, and there are some things that I definitely could have improved upon. In terms of park layouts, the wooden coaster is a good example of bad distribution of things that attract your eye, while at the same time these coasters, I would say, are a good example of good distribution, because the basic way it kind of works in terms of wayfinding, very similar to a hub and spoke. Well, this is a hub and spoke layout, but very similar to standard traditional hub and spoke layout parks like Disney, for instance. You've got the big tower at the end of the main street, which is just going to draw you in there. Like, you want to go there, you want to see it, and then after that, the other areas sort of catch your attention as well. So as you're looking over here, you can see that large looping sort of drawing your eye, and as you walk past here, you can see the skyline of the 4D coaster in the distance. This thing doesn't actually do it, since there's nothing that really sticks out. But the idea of the wooden coaster would also be to have this large thing that really draws your attention. But it's still quite close to the observation tower. It almost dwarfs it, even though, interestingly, the wooden coaster is barely half the size in terms of height of the observation tower. I believe the wooden coaster is about, what is it? Not sure what it says over here. Okay, 46, so it's about 50 meters tall. And the observation tower is 106 meters tall. It is a very tall building. You can kind of tell when I go to this perspective. And what else? Yeah, the planning of this ride was pretty bad. This could have had more detailing, but quite honestly that would have involved a lot of rock spam and a lot of bush spam, so I wanted to let the in-game terraforming speak a bit more, because that would be better on time and on performance of the park as well. And yeah, that is most of the things that I wanted to say. Everything is kept quite simple, and there is not too much to this park, but then that's also the idea of giving you a sort of template to start working on, while at the same time having enough unfinished stuff in there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed this somewhat other than regular kind of way to showcase a park, and we're glad to at least finally see those damn POVs, because I know I always wait too long with actually showing those things. But anyway, I want to thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed this series in general, and I'll see you guys in the next project.